What is up, everybody? The Grunge Bible Podcast is back, episode 165. Today is Monday, May 20th, and we're pumped up. I think it's safe to say that we're both pumped up. My name is Ethan Chow. I'm joined by Chris Salona. I guess we'll get a live check-in. Chris, how are you?
Pretty jacked up. I'm great, man. I'm pretty good. I've had a good week. I feel good. Yeah, things are great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we're recording on a Friday, so we got the weekend ahead of us, and it's Friday morning, so we're getting this knocked out, which is great. Yeah, I'm doing really well. There's a lot of sports, basketball and NHL playoffs have been on. You get your Boston jersey, and so I've been enjoying that every night. Just find comfort and safety in playoff sports at night, and just being able to put it on. And I don't know, it's been easy, coming home at night. And it's not always that easy.
Yeah, it's just like every single night there's people contributing to the chaos. It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't want to watch and then complain.
Yeah. And you had just seen the front bottoms. Now you bring up potential.
Oh yeah,
lyric.
yeah. Last week I saw the front bottoms for I think it's the fifth or sixth time that I've seen them. It was great. I love them. Me and Eddie Vedder got me through my second divorce. Went to the show, saw the front bottoms. It was really awesome. And yeah, they're perfect. Brian's great. He's really nice too. And he gives you what you want for gives you what you need for an hour and 40 minutes, hour and 30 minutes, and sends you home happy. And it's always a really holistic environment. It's really fun. So tonight, actually, we're recording this on May 17th. I am going to see Neil Young and Crazy Horse at the expense of watching the Bruins Panthers Game 6. I'm going to see Neil Young, and it's going to be great. I'm excited for that too.
That's awesome. Yeah, the front bottoms, there's something. It's just their catalog is. And the way that he sings is so easy to sing along and be present.
Yeah.
For some bands, it's just not easy to sing along through. I don't know, and have guitar solos. It's just
that's the ethos of those shows. You go and it's expected and it's encouraged. Everybody sings along to every word, which is cool because there's some shows that you go to and people are there obviously to listen to the musicians playing and people are shut up. I'm trying to fucking listen, stop singing. But the front bottoms is just one of those, everybody joins in. It's great. It's fun. And
you also were I saw you were at Fenway the other day too with pretty nice seats.
I've been on a heater lately. Dude, I don't know how those seats were that. I sat four rows behind.
Brett was I saw Chris was at the game. He's like, those are nice seats, man. I was like,
I've had a bunch of people be like, those are good burgers.
Those are good burgers. Those are good burgers, Donnie.
Yeah, dude, I don't know why. So one, it was a Wednesday. Two, the Red Sox haven't been very good lately. And a lot of Red Sox fans are just kind of apathetic about the whole thing. We sat 4 rows behind the plate for $50 a piece. It was insane. I was gonna buy a ticket along the first base line for $25. I was I'm gonna pay the extra money to sit pretty much behind home plate. It was cool.
Yeah, that's freaking awesome.
It's the perfect view to watch and just take everything in.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those Red Sox, man.
That's another story.
Yeah. If they don't care, if the management doesn't care, then why should we, right?
Right. Who am I? Why am I here?
Yeah, speaking of that, we have an episode today. We're going to, sadly, there is an anniversary on the 18th of Chris Cornell passing away. And, it seems like this is the time of year. We did an episode for Kurt, we did an episode for Elaine, and then now it's Chris Cornell's turn. And so we're going to kind of mimic the episodes that we did for those two guys and kind of talk about some quotes and the way that he looked at music and the way that he looked at writing and a few, various quotes where we get to see who he is as a person outside of his lyrics and outside of what he did on stage. So it should be fun. It'll be a good way to remember him and talk about some different stuff that maybe we haven't touched on over the years.
Absolutely. And we've been doing this show since 2021. So I think this is our third time around No, our fourth time around of talking about Chris Cornell's death, on or around the anniversary. And every year I'm like, oh, well, like we already did an episode about it last year. Like we approached it from this angle, but I think it's important every single year, around these times to chat about it and to, kind of be close to him and his music and what he meant to us and what he continues to mean to us. And I like that this year we've kind of approached it through their words as opposed to their music. And you really gain a deeper appreciation for their music, I think, once you kind of learn, how they approached it and what their philosophies were. So Chris Cornell was such an interesting person, so smart, so inquisitive. And, we're going to kind of get a window into that today through some of his words that we'll talk about. But he passed away May 18th, 2017. So it's been 7 years. And I remember this was really the first big sad thing that happened when after we had started Grunge Bible. We started in 2016, and I still remember waking up that day on the 18th, finding out that he had passed away. I was incredibly hungover, and I woke up at like 5 a.m. to use the bathroom, and I saw my phone like rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, and I just saw like Chris Cornell and dead in a notification. It really, really rocked my world. Got pretty choked up about it, and the rest of the day and the rest of the next couple of days, we're just kind of thinking about him and listening to him as we continue to do. So it'll be good to chat about him and his legacy, because it's still growing 7 years later.
Yeah, immediately thought that it was fake. I remember getting a text, and you said you were really hungover. I think
I was. I was hurting.
No, yeah, I think it was a Friday. Yeah, and it was a weird thing where it's like, you just don't believe it's real. But then you see multiple articles and multiple things, and you're like, okay, this is real. So,
yeah, May 18th was in 2017. It was a Thursday, so I had gone out the Wednesday night. I had just gotten done with college, and like my season had ended for track and field. My junior year had just ended, so I was tying one on, and then next thing you know, never got the chance to see him, which stinks, and I'll always regret it. I think it was 2016. I think he was doing an acoustic tour, and he was playing, I think, in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I was home for a little bit in the summer, and myself and one of my buddies, we were going to go, and we were like, oh, like the tickets are like $75 a piece, and we have to get up to Worcester. Like, we'll just wait for him to come to Boston or him to come to Providence, or for them to be cheaper, and obviously never had the chance. So I'll always regret that, and that's been a big kind of influence on me in terms of when I will and won't decide to see certain artists. You got to take the chance and go and see him, because you never know, obviously, and this is one of the more sobering reminders of that, I think, for everybody who's our age, who's involved in this music. I mean, Chris, when he passed in 2017, we were all late teens, early 20s.
That's why you're going to see Neil Young tonight.
Exactly. That's the thing, because I remember around this time, like 6 or 7 years ago, I wanted to see Neil Young live, and I was like, he's getting up there, and he wasn't playing very much, and then COVID happened, and I was like, I don't know if he's ever going to tour again. And then when he announced this tour, I was like, I got to go see him. It's important to see these people before you don't have the chance to anymore, and it's important to learn from these people even after they've left this earth, as we continue to do with Chris. But before we do that, we do have some thank yous to send out into the world. This episode is possible because of the support of the people that listen to it, and more so the support of the people that listen to it and like it. So we've got a Patreon, which is the most direct way to support the show. We have a $2, a $5, and a $10 tier with which you can give at each and every month to support this show. It keeps the lights on here. It keeps us being able to do this show. So if you want to do that, that would be fantastic. We've also got some merchandise linked in the show notes if you want to rep a Grunge Bible hoodie, or a Grunge Bible crew neck, or a Grunge Bible coffee mug, or a Grunge Bible beanie, Grunge Bible socks. I mean, you've got, anything you could ever want. The Grunge Bible store has it. So that's really, really exciting. And then additionally, because this is the month of May, a couple of weeks ago to start May, we had our friend Brooke Muma on, and she is working with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation in Philadelphia. And May is Cystic Fibrosis Awareness Month. So she's raising money for research and for community support for those affected protected by CF. So for the rest of the month of May, we will have the link to her fundraiser in the show notes. So if you're feeling inclined to assist with a really great organization that's doing some really great work and a really great person in Brooke, you can go ahead and find that link in the show notes as well.
Thank you, Chris. That was very well said.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody out there who is listening and supporting.
Thank you, Ethan.
You're welcome. So before we get into it, into Chris Cornell, let's talk a few things that happened on May 20th in music. First off, there's a bunch of Beatles shit that happened.
There always is, man.
There's movies, there's, first records and all this stuff. And, I'm reading through it and I'm just like, none of this is important enough for me to say. I don't know. There's just so much shit. So
I'll tell you, I'm glad we are out of the era where like the moment that somebody became immediately famous musically, like their management were like, we have to get you into a bunch of movies. Like Elvis was in like 40 movies, and like the Beatles were like, they were churning out movies. It was crazy. I'm glad that era is over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, so moving up, we're going to jump all the way to 1997. This was the great one for the page. The Foo Fighters released their second album, The Color and the Shape. And the album was Grammy nominee for Best Rock Album in 98. Even though the Foo Fighters is an American band, the word color in the album title is always spelt with the British spelling. And that was a nod to the producer Gil Norton, who was in fact British. So I always wondered why
they chose to do that.
O-U-R.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
And I'd always wondered that. So thank you for putting that to bed.
I love that album. Yeah. So
that's a really, they did. I mean, Dave, he has so many special things right from the jump with Foo Fighters. It's really like going from one like golden era of creativity in Nirvana directly into his own. I'll always kind of like as the more time goes by, like the more significant and the more impressive that is. So really, really cool. Color and the Shape is a great album. Moving up 1 year, in 1998 on this day, the funeral for the late, great Frank Sinatra was held in Beverly Hills. And I don't care who you are, Sinatra, there's a time and place for him. And sometimes it just hits. And sometimes you just have to do it your way.
Oh, yeah. Fridays with Frank, Sundays with Sinatra, man.
Exactly, man.
And Saturdays. Oh, yeah. All the time, man. So, and then last year, a famous guitar was auctioned off, and it was by Kurt Cobain, the black Fender Stratocaster that he destroyed in, I believe, the making of Nevermind, was sold for over $600,000, and it was signed by all of the members. And Kurt, known to do this, he signed his name spelled wrong, like Kurdt, and Cobain with a K. And that's just, it's so funny that he would spell his name wrong at times, and the fact that the guitar went for $600,000, a broken guitar went for that much, is just ridiculous, obviously.
Yeah, my favorite part about that guitar is, in addition to the signatures of Kurt, Dave, and Chris, there's a note from Kurt to Mark Lanigan, who I think was in possession of this guitar at some point, but then pawned it or lost it, during his tough years. And it said, "Hello, Mark. Love, your pal, Kurt Cobain / washed up rock star." Which is really awesome. Great. I mean, Kurt, once again, all these guys had such great senses of humor, especially, thinking about Chris. He had his own unique sense of humor as well. So, yeah, really, really wild. $600,000, that's a lot of money for a guitar. But if you're going to buy a $600,000 guitar, it might as well be a completely destroyed one from Nirvana and from Kurt Cobain. So that's pretty great. We've got 2 birthdays to shout out. On this day in 1944, the late and the great Joe Cocker was born. Big fan of Joe Cocker. He was an absolute legend. Most notably for the fact that he took a couple of Beatles songs and just like completely made them his own with a little help from my friends. And She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, Space Captain, Feeling All Right. This man was the king of the cover, in my opinion, back in the day. His set at Woodstock is a must listen. And Joe Cocker's just really fantastic. I believe he passed away in 2014. Another difficult loss. He passed away at the age of 70 in 2014. So, and then one more birthday. On this day in 1946, Cher was born. So happy birthday, Cher. I am not at all well read in the operational art of Cher or Sonny and Cher, or any sort of any sort of Cher adjacent activities. But
the goddess of pop. That's all.
Yeah,
that's all I got.
Still out there, still crushing it. As
people love Cher.
People do love Cher. I don't, but
right.
And there's enough people who do.
Yeah, for sure.
That's this day in music history.
That's right.
It's pretty great. So we're going to move forward now and get into the main part of the episode and talking about Chris Cornell. So, Ethan, we're actually recording this on May 17th, which is the 7th anniversary of the final Soundgarden show, the final Chris Cornell performance. And they were at the Fox Theater in Detroit, Michigan on May 17th, 2017. And they played their show. It's live. It's available in full on YouTube if you care to go and watch it. And it's kind of a tough watch, obviously, because of, knowing what would happen just a few hours later. Chris Cornell passing away, dying by suicide in the early hours of May 18th, 2017 in Detroit. And we kind of discussed when we had heard the news. And I do remember, like, that was the first big moment for the page, as I mentioned, and I still remember posting it. I posted like a picture of him, and I was like, I don't have any words, and I don't really know what else to say, but like, we've lost Chris Cornell, and just like, I think a lot of people, even the page was really small at the time, and a lot of people kind of learned the news from the page. It was really tough, and I remember that the next week, everybody was just sharing their Chris Cornell stories and what he meant to them, and that kind of solidified in a big way, like, the importance of the page and how special it is to be a part of those conversations, because not only do we learn from one another, but I think we can heal with one another, and we can struggle with one another and be sad together and be kind of unified in our collective sadness at moments like this. But Chris Cornell was an absolute giant. Before we recorded this episode, Ethan, I was just kind of thinking to myself while I was setting up my desk and everything to do this show, and I was like, it's unbelievable that this man was in Soundgarden, Audioslave, and Temple of the Dog. I mean, 3 just titanic bands, and right. he was in all of them. I mean, he was the heartbeat for all of them.
Yeah, we talk about when we have these conversations that talk about Dave Grohl and how he's in Foo Fighters, Nirvana, them Crooked Vultures, and like, successful bands. Like, it's hard enough to have one really successful band.
Yeah,
and then you have guys like Chris Cornell who, like, everything he touches becomes gold, and not to count all of his like solo albums, which are also really good.
Mm-hmm.
That, again, is not easy. You see, a lot of people have solo albums that are just like, all right, stick with the band,
Yeah. And even the thing with him, like, it's one thing, Soundgarden, right? I mean, that the synergy in that band from the jump, and they had a bunch of different members in the earlier days before they settled on their kind of continuing and enduring lineup of the 4. It's one thing to have that band, but then to put a band together to pay tribute to your friend Andrew Wood with Temple of the Dog, and for that to work as well as it did. And then when Rage Against the Machine breaks up and Soundgarden breaks up, for those 2 outfits to come together and form Audioslave, like, I think a lot of times, I mean, you see it even in sports all the time. I mean, you get like 2 of the best players and you put them on the floor together. Sometimes it doesn't work, and like their talents aren't synergistic. And Chris somehow was able to just be so, as I said, synergistic with a lot of people. And I mean, for that to work as seamlessly and as perfectly as it did was a testament to, everybody in that band, and especially Chris, I think, for, being able to just inhabit different musical areas. And, kind of as we remember Chris today, just over 7 years after he passed away, we're going to remember him, as we said, through his words. And some of these quotes that we pulled, Ethan, there's a couple of common through lines that I see, and it's just, he carried with him this great reverence for music and for performing, and he had such gratitude for his fans and for the people that listened to his music. And it's just really insightful, I think, to spend time with some of those quotes and to listen to him talk about those things. And it's really inspiring.
Yeah, and as you said, like, most super talents don't necessarily work together well, and I think, yeah, his approach to writing music, and the first quote I want to bring up is the one that kind of stuck out to me. And he said, "To me, music shouldn't be ego driven. When you go out on stage and play songs, it is. But when you're sitting in a room writing songs, it's a completely different process. It's a completely different place. It's a creative place, a musical place, and it's nothing to do with who likes what." And I think that makes, when I hear that, like, it makes sense why he could team up with Rage Against the Machine, all the parts that make up that band, and like add his perfect, flair to it and have these awesome albums, debut album, and same with Temple of the Dog. I mean, I think that like when they were writing stuff, like he was just very cooperative and obviously really creative in his own way. And then when you get on stage, he can unleash like, what we love about him and his performances. But you could just tell he's a musician, a musician's musician. He played music and wrote music that was always sincere and had its deep rabbit holes and deep cuts, because obviously lyrics are really heavy and whatnot, and his vocal parts are pretty extreme, as we know, and it just makes up for like an awesome time on stage, but it never felt phony.
Right.
And it's because he had this awesome mindset when writing.
Yeah, and his mindset and his approach to it empowered him to be completely creative and just be able to kind of go anywhere that he wanted to and anywhere he was inspired to. And like you could tell that like music to him, it wasn't just something to listen to or something just to take in, and like that's how it is. Like it was alive. And something else that he said once that I really, really appreciate and really identify with, he said, "That's the miracle of music. No one can reinterpret a Picasso, but a song can be remixed and covered and interpreted in an infinite number of ways. It is a living thing." I mean, he did that all throughout his career. I mean, just think of some of the covers that he did, some that wouldn't make any sense to do, some that you would never think to do, and some that perhaps prior to listening to it, you're like, oh, there's no way like Chris would be able to do that, or like it wouldn't fit with his voice. I mean, I think about like Nothing Compares to You, for example, just completely unbelievable. And then he did One by U2, but it was set to, or it might be the other way around. He combined One by U2 and One by Metallica, and like he used the melody of one and the lyrics of another. And I mean, just like that type of creativity and like having the confidence in your view of music to be creative in that way is really special. And I mean, he did it all.
Yeah, it seemed that, covers are, I don't know, they're hot and cold for people. They either love them or they don't. And he had a way, going back to what Frusciante talked about, how the music that we make is not ours. It's a good look into who we are. But like, he talked about music being very cooperative between anybody that plays music. And I think Cornell probably had a really similar mindset, because he would play with a ton of people, a ton of different influences, and all the bands back in the day, and how tightly knit they were. And he wasn't afraid to try stuff, and it didn't hurt that he had the voice of an angel,
right?
One of the strongest talents that we know.
Quite the toolbox to go to.
Yeah,
and like something with him too, you could tell that he spent so much time thinking about his philosophy when it comes to music and his viewpoint of it. And something that I appreciate with him is he had such resolve with the way that he viewed it and how he would create. Something else that he said kind of about songwriting, he said, there's this existential argument that comes in at some point when you're overthinking the songwriting process. There's no guarantee that the more time you spend on it, the more you concentrate on certain aspects, that's going to produce a better result, especially in the arts. I mean, that's kind of one of those things. I mean, inspiration can strike at different points, and you kind of go back to more is not often better, sometimes, and maybe the first take is the best, or the first idea is the best, and just like be able to be in such a creative mindset and just general mindset that you have the confidence to pursue those ideas and be like, you know what, like this is the first one, but I think I have something here, and just knowing what's there and what's not there. I mean, he had that, once again, kind of like the greatest athletes, like they just have this instinctive ability to know how to do things. And to them, it's like the Good Will Hunting quote. He's like, I can't hit the ball out of Fenway and I can't play the piano, but when it came to math, like I could always just play. And like Chris is definitely one of those things. Like, I mean, he could always just play. He could always just make music. He was so good at it.
Yeah, this quote kind of touches on basically writer's block and what a lot of people, you know, get themselves into, where they're trying to make something so perfect and they just kind of run themselves in circles. And the most creative people like can bounce around and they don't carry too much weight when they're, you know, being creative. And, you know, he made a lot of albums in his life, like this, you know, the number of albums that his hands were on is quite a lot. And yeah, it came easy to him. And I think that's why you have so many great, you know, examples of songs from him.
Yeah. I always wonder with people that are the best at what they do, like a Chris Cornell, for example, like they have to know on some level that they're supremely talented and that they're the best. Yeah. And something, you know, assuming that, something that I love with Chris is that he always, despite that, you know, he always had such gratitude for his fans and for people that listen to him. And he said once, I think it's important for fans to know that if I'm doing something that inspires me musically, then I think it will inspire someone else too. And just kind of going back to different things about, you know, the songwriting process and like what his reasons were for making music. I mean, you could tell that it was about being inspired himself and conveying certain things that were inside of him. And he also said at the end of the day, it's the fans who make you who you are, which, I mean, that like exchange of respect, I think, is something that's really special with Chris Cornell and with his shows. You know, it's like he had such respect for the people that were there to listen to him because he felt that way about so many artists that inspired him.
Mm-hmm. And the fans showed a ton of support for all of his work and what he did. And, you know, that I think that goes a long way in trying to navigate through difficult times about being famous and being, you know, in the limelight in a lot of ways. It probably makes it harder though too, because all eyes are on you all the time. But the fans definitely, I mean, people thank the fans all the time, and we have genuine fans that love everything you do. I mean, there's a lot of inspiration that comes out of that. One of the quotes he said, I come from a childhood where I spent a lot of time alone and a lot of time just living with my imagination. And a certain amount of the adult world was kind of alienating. And that, you know, that's really interesting because you have a lot of really successful artists, musicians, creators. Like, yeah, they grow up like very, with a lot of imagination and a lot of like free flowing, you know, depending on the circumstances. I mean, when you're a kid, you know, if you're, you know, creatively inclined, you spend a lot of time in that, and it's a stress-free like atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, once you start producing stuff and you get eyes on you, then it becomes more of a job, and it's really hard to separate those two. But you have this like childhood love for whatever your passion is that like you don't want to let go. You want to keep finding that spot, staying in the pocket of like good, honest like creation. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, like a lot of really successful people, kind of feel the same way as that. Like, you know, in the beginning, it's just, I don't know, it's easy, and you're just like, your mind is all over the place in a good way. And then when you get older, like there becomes so much more parameters that you have to follow, and yeah, it can be alienating because people are expecting so much.
Yeah, and so much of it too is like not losing that spark and not losing that kind of carefree, imaginative space, and continuing to be able to connect with it even as you grow up and enter into that adult world that may or may not be alienating on certain levels. And I think the best artists are always able to kind of continue to tap into that creative space, because everybody kind of like your processes and like how you think about things, like those are solidified from a much younger age huge than you would even think. And I think it must be the same with writing music and everything, and the way that you interpret stuff and the way that you think about it. And I mean, that bedrock is laid from a very early age. And with Chris too, spending so much time listening to music as a youngster, and really just spending time with music because he was kind of alone, like he himself said. There's a lot there that kind of laid the foundation for what was to come.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad knowing the ending, and because you don't really expect tragedy to strike when it does, especially when people are getting older and they've seemed to made it out of the shock of being famous. There's people that die in their 20s and was just like, it was too much too fast. Mm-hmm. Then you have someone that lives into their 50s, and you just it's a lot heavier because I don't know, when I think of suicide, and suicide happens at every age, and I'm not saying that it's more understandable when younger like people do it because they're they don't know as much, or it's just like a whirlwind in your 20s or even before your 20s and whatnot. And when I hear about people that that pass later on in life, it is like sad. I mean, it's really sad when younger people do, but like later, it's just like, oh my gosh, like it is. I don't know. It's really heartbreaking to hear about. And this one was like I just hear about it. I'm just like, this is just heartbreaking to think about that, because he was a made man and just extremely successful and talented in so many ways. And it's heartbreaking.
And he spent so much time around people who struggled, and he lost so many people close to him. And I just, it's so tough because I think something that happened after he passed away, like everybody went back and listened to his songs, and I'm like, how did we not know? But he was just so intimately connected with a lot of those darker elements of just kind of human thought and human behavior. And he said something once in an interview. It really wasn't too long before he passed away, and I mean, it's the truest thing that you could say about mental illness or addiction. And he's like, there is not an age, sex, occupation, financial situation that makes you immune to these types of things like drug addiction or mental illness or different struggles like that. It can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere. And it's so true. And I think that's what makes it difficult for me, and still difficult for me with him, because he seemed to become such an advocate for raising awareness for these types of things and just being kind to everybody. And it really stinks to somebody in that situation who is so aware of these things could succumb to the very thing that he spent a lot of time thinking about and helping other people with. Right? I mean, so many people, particularly with the grunge genre in the North Seattle, Pacific Northwest music. I mean, there's so many people that, this music saved my life, and it taught me to endure, and it taught me to continue. And he wrote from that space so much. He said once, if you write a song about feeling bad in a particular way, and then somebody hears that song and then they think, wow, I really identify with the way that he felt when he wrote this, or maybe there's someone out there that feels like me, I'm not the only one. What happens? They feel better. So even if it's a dark theme, it can actually have a positive effect. And he spent a lot of time writing songs like that, like Fell on Black Days, for example, has helped a lot of people, talking about, when those mental struggles can come along, there's no warning. And, when you get out of them, they can kind of always be around. So you just have to be kind to people and be kind to yourself. And something else that he said, kind of relating to that, he said, I've always liked depressing music because a lot of times listening to it when you're down can actually make you feel less depressed. Also, even though a person may have problems with depression, sometimes you can actually be kind of comfortable in that space because you know how to operate within it. And I remember reading that one after he passed away, and it really struck me, because I think he was somebody that had learned for a long time how to operate within it. And it just goes to show you, tying into the first quote that I just shared, it can happen to anybody, and there's nobody who's immune to these types of things.
Yeah, I was just looking at that quote and about to read it as well. Do you agree with it? Do you feel like spending time with depressing music can actually help you feel less depressed?
I think so. And I think it's important to not run from feelings like that. And obviously to seek out assistance and community, and help from professionals in certain situations. But I think to live with something and to overcome something, you have to know your way around it a little bit, and understand that feeling, and understand perhaps maybe why it's happening, or when it's happening. So it's important, I think, to not run from those things, and to deal with them, and you have to deal with them through experience, right? And yeah, I definitely, even in my past, like there have been instances where I've not been doing well, and I've listened to music that's talking about not doing well, and it does feel better. There's something cathartic in the sense that there's somebody out there who has experienced something similar, and they could create something beautiful out of it. So I can do the same thing, and I can go on and create beautiful things in my life and in the life of people around me, despite the fact that I'm feeling this way right now.
Yeah, I think it's very valid. I mean, just like anything in life, the more experience you have, the better you are equipped to handle it, especially failure. If we think about sport, people go to the playoffs or they do bad, and the next year, like they're using those experiences to be better, and they can go in a ton of ways. Like if you've had multiple job startups and it hasn't worked, like you just get more equipped the more you do it. So same thing when you're in a down time, and you listen to music that helped at one point back in the day. I mean, you can go back to that song and immediately, it's going to be time stamped from the time that you got over it the first time, or the time that was really difficult to get over it. And compare and contrast, and you can use those tools that you have, made, and get through it. So I definitely agree with it. Like, obviously it can be a slippery slope if you're always down and listening to down stuff, but it does help, and I think it's important. And like you said, it's very cathartic, and you feel definitely a sense of community when you kind of, that's what the page is. The page is a big community where you can go and feel heard, and feel like just seen, and in a way that you're not going to get when you're in the bedroom by yourself.
Right. And something tying those thoughts back into Chris Cornell, something I'll always love him for, is the choice that he made to, having spent a lot of time in those tougher neighborhoods of his mind, and being very well acquainted with those tough feelings, he chose to write about it, and he chose to share it with people. And every single time he took the stage and sang those songs, he was helping people. I mean, talk about, taking something tough and dark and making it beautiful, and using it as a tool. And that's the thing, he may not be here anymore, but every time somebody listens to his songs, he's continuing to help. And that's his legacy. That's what he leaves us with. He's left us with so many great instruments that we can use to better our own lives, and teach us about the world, and teach us how to treat people, and teach us how to treat ourselves. I mean, that's what a great gift to have left. And it's, it still shakes me up that he's not here anymore. But as a legacy, I mean, what a powerful legacy. And I think it's only grown since he's passed away.
Yeah, he was just a hell of a man in a lot of ways, obviously, and the stories about him told from other musicians are always great to hear. And it's sad. 7 years, I can't. It's crazy. 7 years is like a long time. I mean,
it is a long time.
Definitely remember exactly when you heard it, and soon we'll be talking about the 10-year anniversary, and that's life. Life moves on, and that's why, like, the older you get, the weight of life just keeps getting heavier and heavier, and stuff keeps getting piled on, and it just keeps getting heavier from when you were younger. And I guess we all get to look forward to that, as we get older.
And speaking of the passage of time, I mean, it's been 7 years, and as you said, pretty soon it'll be 10 years since we've lost him. And the more time goes by, I think the more important it is to talk about what his music means to us, and what he means to us, and how he's helped us, because that's another way that his legacy lives. It's that direct artist to fan interaction that's still occurring, but it's also fan to fan, and it's also from our perspective, it's asking people to share what Chris's music means to them, or sharing their favorite show that they saw, or their favorite song, or their favorite lyric, or their funniest memory of an artist or something, because that's another way that they live on. And I mean, God knows this man touched so many people's lives, and he's still doing it. There's still people that are discovering him today. They're going to listen to him for the first time and start on their journey with him. I mean, there's new journeys beginning with him every single day, even though he's not been here. But his work and his gifts are still here.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a pretty good stopping point. And yeah, Chris, we're Cornell. That is not you. We are thinking about you and your life, and I hope everybody out there. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and you'd go back and listen and think about it, and spend some time in the area, as we like to say, and see what it can do for you, and just be thankful. Thank the people around you, and be present today.
Absolutely,
and every day. But
there's no better advice
you'd
than
like
that.
To say, Chris?
No, that's it, man. Chris Cornell, as you said, hell of a man of his time and a man of all time. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. Go on and listen to some Chris Cornell, some Soundgarden, some Temple, some Audio Slave. Maybe share it with somebody that doesn't listen to his music, and you can start somebody else on their journey with him. But thanks for your time this episode. Thanks for your support. We appreciate all of you, especially we appreciate our producer Drew McFadden for continuing to help us make this show 165 weeks running. And that's pretty much it. Aside from songs of the week, we've probably got to put some of those out.
Yeah. If you're listening, Drew, give me a call. I haven't talked to you in a while.
We got to do a conference call.
We have to check in with our producer. We check in every week, but yeah. So songs of the week. I think I'm gonna go with "Nothing Compares to You."
Nice his cover, yeah.
Yeah, Chris's cover. It's that song is incredible, and it just seems right. It's at this point in time. I mean, that's a great song, and I'm definitely going to listen to it right after I get off here.
Yeah.
It just seems so right.
I like that. My song of the week is, for once, it's going to be a happy song. I'm going to pick Dusty from Soundgarden's album Down on the Upside. And this is kind of like a rebuttal to Fell on Black Days, where it's like, it's turning back around, and I think I like it. I don't know why, but I'm just going to kind of let it ride. It's coming on the wind. So this is a great song. It's beautiful out here today, so I'm going to spend some time outside and listen to Dusty for sure before I go to the Neil Young show tonight. So that's going to be my song of the week. So we've got two great picks from a great man, Chris Cornell.
That's awesome. Did you, by chance, have your softball game last night?
No, man, it was rained out. So the last 2 weeks, it poured buckets the night before, and evidently the field conditions haven't been up to par. So we've been held off. So next week, I'm going to be ready.
Triple header?
Yeah, no, unfortunately. They might tack them on to the end of the season. I'm not sure. It came at a good time, though, Ethan. Like, I've been having, and I don't think we've chatted about this, but my knee has been not feeling great lately. I've been struggling. Yeah, I've got some things going on that are not only limiting potentially my softball playing, but like my lifting has been kind of tough, and I really hope that there's not anything wrong with my knee, but it kind of feels like there is.
Yeah. Oh man. That's
just one
tough.
of those things.
It may be good. I just have one question. If you had to play last night and you would have broke your leg, would you still go to the concert?
I would have to. It's just like Jimmy Buffett, man.
Exactly.
The people need what they need. So
that would have been you.
I'm glad I didn't have to find out, though.
Yeah, you just need to go on a bum knee, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening and making it to the end of the podcast. If you are listening, we love you more than everybody else that dropped out early or did not start at all. We love that. So thank you very much. We'll be back next week, same time, same place for another arousing episode of the Grunge Bubble Podcast.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.